Have you ever made a choice so significant that you could literally feel other versions of your life disappearing? Like standing at a crossroads where each path leads to a completely different existence. And the moment you step forward, all other roads vanish into thin air. Quantum physics just revealed something mind-bending. Those other versions didn't just feel real. They actually existed simultaneously until you made your decision. There's a fundamental mechanism in reality that explains why your choices don't just select a future. They collapse entire universes of possibility into a single timeline. Stay until the end, because understanding this will radically transform how you make decisions and create your reality. Think about the last major decision you faced. Maybe it was choosing between two job offers, deciding whether to stay in a relationship, or picking which city to move to. Before you decided, both futures felt possible, didn't they? You could almost live in both realities at once in your mind. But the instant you chose, something shifted. One path became real, solid, tangible. The others faded into what could have been. Before we go deeper, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because this type of content can fundamentally rewire how you understand consciousness and reality creation. Today, we're diving into the most fascinating discovery in modern physics, one that proves your decisions literally shape the fabric of reality itself. Here's something most people never stop to consider. What's actually happening in that space before you make a choice? That suspended moment where multiple futures feel equally real. You're not just imagining possibilities, you're existing in what quantum physics calls superposition. In the quantum realm, particles don't have definite properties until they're measured or observed. An electron doesn't have a specific location until you look for it. It exists in multiple places simultaneously, in a cloud of probability. Only when measurement happens does it choose one location and collapse into that singular reality. Your consciousness operates the same way with decisions. Before you commit to a choice, you're holding multiple realities in superposition. The version of you that takes the job exists simultaneously with the version that doesn't. The timeline where you say yes coexists with the timeline where you walk away. These aren't fantasies or daydreams. They're actual probability waves in the quantum field of your consciousness. Each possible future has its own probability amplitude, its own likelihood of manifesting. And here's the crucial part. They're all real until you collapse them with your decision. Scientists discovered this through experiments that still baffle researchers today. When they observe quantum particles behaving in superposition, the particles exist in contradictory states at once. A particle can spin both clockwise and counterclockwise simultaneously. It can be in two locations at the same exact moment. This violates everything your logical mind thinks it knows about how reality works. But it's been proven thousands of times in laboratories worldwide. The math is irrefutable, the experiments are reproducible, and the implications are staggering. Now here's where it gets personal. If particles can exist in multiple states until observed, and your body is made of trillions of these particles, what does that mean for your choices? It means the moment before decision is the most powerful moment in your existence. You're literally standing in a space where multiple versions of your future are simultaneously real. The quantum field hasn't collapsed yet. All paths are open. All possibilities are alive. But the second you decide, truly decide with full commitment, you force the quantum field to collapse. You select one probability wave and turn it into physical reality, while all others fade into the realm of could have been. This isn't metaphorical, it's mechanical. Your decision-making process is a quantum collapse event. But decisions don't happen in isolation, and this is where quantum physics reveals something even more profound. Every choice you make is entangled with countless other factors, people, and events in ways that defy space and time. Quantum entanglement is one of the strangest phenomena ever discovered. When two particles become entangled, they remain connected regardless of distance. Measure one particle and the other responds instantly, even if they're on opposite sides of the universe. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance because it seemed to violate the speed of light. Information appeared to travel instantaneously between entangled particles. But experiments proved Einstein wrong on this one. Entanglement is absolutely real. Particles separated by kilometers demonstrate correlated behavior that can't be explained by any classical physics. They're not sending signals to each other. They're fundamentally connected at a level that transcends space itself. Now apply this to your life and your decisions. Every person you've ever connected with, every experience you've had, every thought you've entertained has created quantum entanglement in your consciousness field. You're not separate from the people you love, the places you've been, or the dreams you hold. You're entangled with all of it. When you make a decision, you're not just collapsing your own possibilities, you're affecting the entire web of entangled relationships and potentials connected to you. This is why certain choices feel heavier than others. You can sense the ripples spreading out through your entangled network. A decision to move cities doesn't just change your location, it shifts the probability waves of everyone connected to you. A choice to end a relationship doesn't just affect two people. It reverberates through entire networks of entangled consciousness. This might sound overwhelming, like you're responsible for too much. But here's the liberating truth. Everyone else's choices are also affecting your probability waves. You're in a constant dance of co-creation with every conscious being in your field. Nobody is collapsing reality alone. We're all entangled participants in a massive quantum system. Each decision we make sending ripples through the whole network. The key is to make choices from an aware state, knowing you're part of this web, not separate from it. When you decide from that awareness, you align with the natural flow of entangled creation instead of fighting against it. Your choices become more harmonious, more powerful, because they're working with the quantum field rather than trying to dominate it. To really understand how observation collapses reality, we need to look at the most famous experiment in quantum physics, the double-slit experiment. Scientists fire particles, let's say photons, at a barrier with two slits. When nobody observes which slit the photon goes through, something bizarre happens. The photon behaves like a wave, passing through both slits simultaneously and creating an interference pattern on the detector screen behind the barrier. This pattern can only occur if the photon literally went through both openings at once, interfering with itself like ripples in water. But here's where it gets absolutely wild. The moment you place a detector to observe which slit the photon actually passes through, everything changes instantly. The wave pattern disappears completely. The photon now behaves like a solid particle, choosing one slit and creating a simple two-band pattern on the screen. The act of observation forced the photon to make a choice between the two paths. Before observation, it existed in superposition, taking both paths. After observation, it collapsed into one definite trajectory. This experiment has been repeated with electrons, atoms, and even large molecules with the same results. Observation isn't passive, it's creative. It forces reality to choose a specific state from multiple possibilities. Now think about your own life through this lens. Before you observe or focus on something, it exists in a field of multiple potentials. That dream you have, that goal you're working toward, that relationship you want to manifest, it all exists in superposition right now. Multiple versions are playing out simultaneously in the quantum field. But the moment you observe it with expectation, with need, with desperation to see if it's working, you force a premature collapse. You make the quantum field choose a state before the full probability wave has developed. This is why desperate checking, anxious monitoring, and obsessive tracking often sabotage manifestation. You're collapsing possibilities too early, before they've had time to build full probability amplitude. The quantum field responds to your observation by solidifying whatever state your consciousness expects to find. If you observe from lack, you collapse lack. If you observe from doubt, you collapse uncertainty. The double-slit experiment proves that how you look determines what you see. Not metaphorically, literally. Your observation creates the outcome. Light has a dual nature that mirrors the relationship between your potential and your manifested reality. Light behaves as a wave when it's traveling, spreading out through space as electromagnetic oscillations. But when it interacts with matter, when it's absorbed or emitted, it behaves as discrete particles called photons. Wave or particle, which is light really? The answer quantum physics gives is both, depending on context. This duality isn't a flaw in our understanding. It's fundamental to how reality operates. The wave represents potential, possibility, the field of all that could be. The particle represents manifestation, the collapsed state, the definite outcome. Louis de Broglie extended this concept, proving that all matter has wave properties. Even electrons, which we think of as solid particles, have an associated wavelength when they move. Everything in the universe exists in this dual state, poised between wave and particle, between potential and manifestation. You, right now, are both. The version of you that exists as pure potential with infinite possible futures is the wave. The version that's reading these words with a specific history and current circumstances is the particle. Most people live entirely in particle mode. They identify completely with their collapsed, manifested reality. They think their current circumstances define all that's possible for them. But quantum physics reveals that's only half the picture. Your wave function, your field of potential, is still active. It never stops. New possibilities are constantly forming in your probability cloud. The question is whether you're aware of them and whether you're skilled at collapsing the high probability versions you actually want. Here's the practical application. To manifest something new, you need to spend time in wave consciousness before collapsing into particle reality. That means holding the vision, feeling the possibility, dwelling in the potential without forcing it into immediate physical form. You're building the amplitude of the probability wave. The stronger the wave, the more powerfully it collapses when the time is right. But if you're constantly collapsing it prematurely by checking for results, you never let the wave build full strength. You get weak, inconsistent manifestations because you never gave the potential time to develop fully. Master the art of dwelling in wave consciousness while trusting the collapse will happen at the perfect moment. And you master reality creation itself. Before you speak a word, before you take an action, before you make any external move, your thoughts exist in superposition. You're holding multiple ideas, multiple responses, multiple possible actions simultaneously in your consciousness. This is why that pause before you speak can be so powerful. In that space, you're in pure potential. You could say a dozen different things, each leading to a completely different outcome. The version of reality where you respond with kindness exists alongside the version where you react with anger. Both are real possibilities until you choose. What most people don't realize is that thoughts have quantum properties. They're not just abstract concepts floating in your brain. They're patterns of energy with measurable effects. Studies in neuroscience show that merely thinking about an action activates many of the same neural pathways as actually performing that action. Your brain can't fully distinguish between vividly imagined experience and real experience. This is because thoughts operate in the quantum realm before manifesting as neurotransmitter patterns and electrical signals. When you hold a thought without immediately acting on it, you're maintaining superposition. That thought exists as a probability wave with potential to collapse into multiple different actions. The longer you hold it in awareness without forcing it into form, the more you can feel into which collapse would serve you best. This is the essence of conscious response versus unconscious reaction. Reaction is immediate collapse with no consideration of other possibilities. Response is deliberate collapse after exploring the superposition space. Meditation practices across cultures have always emphasized the gap between stimulus and response. That gap is quantum superposition. In that space, you're free. You haven't collapsed into any particular behavior yet. All options remain open. The more you train yourself to rest in that space without anxiety, the more power you have to collapse your responses consciously rather than reactively. This applies to everything. How you respond to criticism, how you handle challenges, how you make major life decisions. If you can pause and feel the superposition of possibilities before collapsing into action, you become a conscious creator rather than an unconscious reactor. Your life transforms from a series of automatic collapses into a deliberate art of choosing which probability waves to manifest. That's the difference between living and creating. Werner Heisenberg discovered something that shook physics to its core. There's a fundamental limit to how much you can know about certain pairs of properties at the same time. You can measure a particle's position with great precision, but doing so makes its momentum uncertain. Or you can measure its momentum precisely, but then its position becomes fuzzy. This isn't a technological limitation. It's built into the fabric of reality itself. The universe prevents you from having complete information about everything simultaneously. Why would reality be structured this way? Because perfect knowledge would eliminate possibility. If you knew everything about a system with absolute certainty, there would be no room for change, no space for new possibilities to emerge. The uncertainty principle ensures that reality remains open, fluid, capable of surprise. It's a feature, not a bug. Applied to your life, this principle explains why you can never have complete certainty about outcomes before you commit to a choice. You can research, analyze, plan all you want, but there will always be unknown variables, always uncertainty about exactly how things will unfold. This drives control-oriented people absolutely crazy. They want guarantees. They want to know exactly what will happen before they commit. But Heisenberg proved that's impossible. The more tightly you try to define and control one aspect of a situation, the more uncertain other aspects become. Try to control exactly how much money you'll make, and you lose flexibility in how you spend your time. Try to control exactly how a relationship unfolds, and you kill spontaneity and genuine connection. The tighter the grip, the more slits through your fingers. The wisdom here is learning to dance with uncertainty rather than fighting it. Uncertainty isn't the enemy of manifestation. It's the field where manifestation happens. Without uncertainty, without the quantum fuzziness that allows multiple states to coexist before collapse, nothing new could ever emerge. You'd be locked into predetermined outcomes with zero creative power. So when you feel uncertain about a decision or outcome, recognize that you're in the quantum field. You're in the space where miracles are possible, where unexpected solutions can emerge, where reality is still forming. Certainty would kill that potential. Embrace the uncertainty as proof that you're in creative space, not dead space. Then make your choice from trust rather than fear, and watch how differently reality collapses. Here's a paradox that will flip your mind. The moment you become certain about something, you collapse all other possibilities and lock yourself into one track. Certainty feels safe. It feels like power, but it's actually a prison. When you're absolutely certain you know how something must happen, you close the door to every other way it could happen. Your consciousness rigidly collapses the quantum field into one narrow outcome, eliminating the flexibility that could have brought you something even better. Think about someone who's certain they know exactly what kind of partner they need. They have a detailed list: specific height, career, personality traits, lifestyle. That certainty collapses their romantic possibilities into an incredibly narrow probability tunnel. They walk past potential connections because those people don't match the rigid template. Meanwhile, someone who holds their desire more fluidly while staying open to surprise keeps multiple probability waves active. They're available to connections they never would have predicted, but turn out to be exactly what they needed. This doesn't mean you shouldn't have standards or preferences. It means holding those preferences as guidelines rather than rigid requirements. The quantum field can deliver what you want in infinite ways, but only if you don't strangle it with certainty about the exact form it must take. Neville Goddard taught that you should be certain about the end result, the feeling of wish fulfilled, but flexible about the path. That's quantum wisdom. You collapse the feeling state you want to experience while leaving the how open to infinite possibilities. Certainty about method kills magic. Certainty about desired feeling creates it. When you're certain you feel abundant, the quantum field finds countless ways to manifest experiences that match that feeling. But if you're certain abundance must come through one specific job, one specific opportunity, you've limited the field to one narrow probability tunnel. Most people reverse this. They're uncertain about their worthiness to feel good, but rigidly certain about how things must happen. That's backwards. Be certain about your right to feel fulfilled, peaceful, abundant, loved. Be wildly uncertain and open about how that will show up. Let the quantum field surprise you with its creativity. Some of the best things in life come through doors you didn't even know existed. But you'll never walk through them if you're too certain about which door is the right one. Eugene Wigner proposed a thought experiment that reveals just how strange quantum reality gets. Imagine your friend is in a sealed laboratory observing a quantum particle. For your friend inside, the particle collapses into a definite state the moment they observe it. But for you outside the lab, unable to see the measurement, the entire system, including your friend, remains in superposition. From your perspective, your friend exists in a superposition of having seen different results. You both exist in the same universe, but you're experiencing different layers of reality. This isn't just philosophical speculation. Experiments have been conducted that demonstrate these layered realities are real. Different observers can have genuinely different experiences of the same event until their observations align. This shatters the idea of one objective reality that everyone shares identically. Instead, there are nested layers of observation, each creating its own version of reality. Your personal reality is the layer that's collapsed for you based on your observations and consciousness state. But that doesn't mean it's the only reality happening. This explains why two people can experience the same situation completely differently. They're not just interpreting the same reality through different filters. They're actually collapsing different versions of the quantum field based on their observation angle. Someone in victim consciousness walks into a situation and collapses experiences that confirm victimhood. Someone in empowered consciousness walks into the same situation and collapses opportunities for growth. Same quantum field, different layers of reality manifesting based on the observer's state. You create your layer of reality through your dominant observation patterns. If you habitually observe from fear, you live in the fear layer where threatening possibilities collapse more frequently. If you habitually observe from trust, you live in the trust layer where supportive possibilities collapse more readily. Neither is more real than the other objectively. They're just different layers within the larger quantum field. Here's the liberation in this. You don't have to convince anyone else that your layer is the right one. You don't have to make everyone see what you see. They're operating from their observation layer. You're operating from yours. Focus on refining your own observation patterns, elevating your own consciousness state, and your layer becomes increasingly beautiful, regardless of what others are experiencing in theirs. You're not separate, you're entangled, but you each collapse your own version. There are two ways the quantum field collapses into your experience: conscious collapse and reactive collapse. Reactive collapse is what happens when you're on autopilot, when old patterns, fears, and conditioning do the observing. Your subconscious programming scans reality, looking for confirmation of its beliefs, and the quantum field obligingly collapses experiences that match those expectations. You're not deliberately choosing what to manifest. You're unconsciously repeating what you've always known. This is why people stay stuck in loops. Same relationship drama with different people. Same money struggles despite different jobs. Same health issues despite different treatments. The patterns persist because the observation pattern hasn't changed. Subconscious beliefs are observing reality and collapsing it according to ancient programming. To break the loop, you must become conscious of how you're observing. What are you looking for when you scan your life? What are you expecting to find? Those expectations are observation filters that collapse matching experiences. If you expect disappointment, your consciousness scans for evidence of disappointment and collapses any ambiguous situation into that interpretation. If you expect support, you scan for evidence of support and collapse situations into that reality instead. Conscious collapse is when you deliberately choose your observation frequency before looking at life. You decide ahead of time what state of consciousness you're going to observe from. Not what you'll see, but how you'll see it. This is what all the great manifestation teachers mean by live from the end or assume the wish fulfilled. You're not pretending external circumstances are different. You're choosing the internal observation state first. Then you look at life from that state and watch how differently the quantum field collapses. Someone practicing conscious collapse doesn't wait to see if something works before believing. They choose the belief state first, then observe from there. And the quantum field has no choice but to collapse experiences that match that observation frequency. This feels backwards to the rational mind. The rational mind says, "Show me proof, then I'll believe." But quantum mechanics says, "Choose your observation state, then reality collapses to match." You can't see what you're not looking for. You can't experience what you're not vibrationally aligned to observe. So conscious manifestation isn't about manipulating external reality. It's about choosing your observation state so intentionally that reality has to collapse in alignment with it. That's the quantum mechanism behind every manifestation teaching ever created. Ancient traditions called the pineal gland the seat of the soul, the third eye, the bridge between physical and spiritual dimensions. Modern science is discovering they might have been describing a quantum antenna. The pineal gland is uniquely positioned in the brain, floating in cerebrospinal fluid, not protected by the blood-brain barrier like other neural tissue. It contains crystalline structures that can respond to electromagnetic frequencies. Some researchers propose it functions as a quantum transducer, capable of perceiving information beyond the 5 physical senses. Whether or not the pineal is literally performing quantum measurements, it represents something crucial. The part of your consciousness that can observe without collapsing into rigid definition. Unlike the analytical mind that must categorize and label everything it sees, pineal awareness can hold multiple truths simultaneously. It can perceive the wave and particle nature of reality at once without forcing a choice. This is the consciousness state where you're aware of multiple possibilities without anxiously collapsing them prematurely. When your pineal is activated through meditation, darkness practices, or consciousness work, you develop the ability to observe your life from a more expanded state. You can see patterns, connections, and possibilities that the linear mind misses. You receive intuitive hits about which choices lead where, not through logical deduction, but through direct quantum perception. This isn't mystical nonsense. It's access to information that exists in the quantum field before it collapses into physical form. You're reading the probability waves before they solidify. People with active pineal function often report knowing things they couldn't logically know, sensing events before they happen, feeling the energy of situations before entering them. That's quantum observation, operating beyond the limitations of the 5 senses. You're perceiving the superposition field directly, rather than only seeing what's already collapsed. This gives you enormous creative power, because you can sense which choices have high probability amplitude and which are low probability, even before taking action. You develop quantum intuition. To activate this level of perception, you must learn to quiet the chattering analytical mind that constantly collapses everything into labels and judgments. In the space of not knowing, of suspended definition, your quantum observer awakens. You start seeing reality as the fluid, responsive, multi-layered field it actually is, rather than the solid fixed structure your senses suggest. And from that awareness, you can participate in reality creation at a much deeper level than most people ever access. The final piece of this quantum puzzle is understanding the balance between allowing and controlling. Control is the ego's attempt to force specific collapses through sheer will and manipulation. Allowing is the soul's trust that the quantum field will collapse in alignment when you hold the right state. Most people swing between these extremes, trying to control everything until they're exhausted, then collapsing into passive hoping. Neither works because neither is quantum. True quantum creation is active allowance. You're not passive, waiting for reality to happen to you. But you're also not forcing, manipulating, and micromanaging every detail. You set clear intention, you align your observation state, you take inspired action, and then you allow the quantum field to surprise you with how it delivers. You're directing the energy without strangling it. You're collapsing consciously without desperate attachment to exact form. This is the art every master manifester has learned through trial and error. When you try to control how and when something manifests, you're operating from the assumption that you know better than the quantum field. You're assuming your limited perspective sees all possible paths and can determine the optimal route. But the field has access to infinite variables, infinite connections, infinite creative solutions your conscious mind can't perceive. When you try to control the exact path, you cut off 99% of the ways the universe could deliver what you want. You force it through the one narrow tunnel your mind can imagine. Allowing means you collapse the feeling state, the end result, the essence of what you desire. But you stay open to being amazed by the delivery method. You trust that the quantum field's intelligence far exceeds your ability to plot and plan. This doesn't mean you don't take action. It means your action comes from inspiration rather than desperation. You move when you feel pulled, not when you're forcing yourself out of fear. And you stay open to paths appearing that you never would have predicted. The people who manifest most powerfully are those who've learned this balance. They're crystal clear on the what and the why, the feeling they want to experience. But they're wildly flexible on the how and the when, trusting quantum intelligence to orchestrate details they couldn't possibly manage. That's when magic happens, when synchronicities multiply, when doors open that weren't even on your radar. Stop trying to control the quantum field and start dancing with it instead. So here's what we've uncovered. You're not choosing between pre-existing options out there in reality. You're choosing which version of yourself will collapse which layer of the quantum field into your experience. Every decision is a quantum event. Every observation is a creative act. You're never separate from what you see. You're always entangled with it, always co-creating it through the very act of perception. The moment before you choose is sacred because all possibilities exist simultaneously. But the moment of choice is equally sacred because that's when you exercise your creative power to collapse one probability into manifestation. Don't rush the superposition space. Don't anxiously force premature collapse. But also don't avoid decision out of fear. Learn to dance in the quantum field, resting in potential when it serves you, collapsing consciously when the time is right. If you made it this far, drop a comment with "I choose my reality" and tell me which insight from this video shifted something in how you see your own creative power. And make sure you're subscribed because we're going deep into more consciousness-expanding content that'll keep challenging everything you thought you knew. Now, go watch the next video that's appearing on your screen because this journey of quantum awakening only gets more fascinating from here. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.